So collecting quantitative data. And when we collect quantitative data, it is understood that the research design is quantitative research design. So these are the learning objectives. State 5 steps in the process of quantitative data collection. Identify how to select participants for a study. Identify the permissions needed for a study. List different options for collecting information. Locate, select, and assess an instrument or instruments for use in the data collection. Then describe procedures for administering quantitative data collection. So these are the 5 steps in the process of data collection. So number 1, determining participants to study, obtaining permissions needed, considering what types of information to collect, locating and selecting instruments, administering the data collection. So what participants will you study? So identify your unit analysis. Unit analysis is the level individual, family, school, or school district, or it can be a barangay, or it can be a CTO, or it can just be a village or a block from which the data will be collected or will be gathered. There may be different units of analysis, one for the dependent variable and one for the independent variable. Then specify the population and sample. So dapat you must know what is the population of your thesis, of your research, of your dissertation. So group of individuals that have the same characteristics. So we defined population already earlier in statistics. So for now, the population definition is the same to what we have in statistics. If you have not taken statistics under me, so you must know what is a population. It's actually all members of the group, the block, or shall we say the community in which you consider that one as the site of your study. And then sample, since population is so big and you could not afford to collect data from that big population, then you are going to collect data from the sample only. So sample is a subgroup of the target population that the researcher plans to study for the purpose of making generalizations about the target population. Samples are only estimates, and these are actually representatives of the population. The difference between the sample estimate and the true population is the sampling error. So if you are in my statistics class, I mentioned about sampling error. And if you are not, this is your first time, then let me talk about sampling error. If you collect the data from the population, then that kind of data, that kind of process is what we call census. If you collect the data from the sample, we classify that one as survey. Now, when you collect the data from the population and you collect the data from the sample, so you have data based on census and data based on survey. The data taken from the entire population and the data taken from the sample would not be exactly the same. They have differences and they have also similarities. So if you see the data collected from the population and if you see the data collected from the sample, there are differences. And that difference is what we call sampling error. The sampling error is a difference of the data collected from the population, if the data are actually collected from the population, and the data collected from the sample. And that difference is what we call sampling error. Sampling error is not actually referring to an error in the process of collecting the sample. That's not the definition. So I repeat, the sampling error is the difference between the data collected from the population and the data collected from the sample. That there is a difference between the data based on census and the data based on survey. Figure 5.1, populations and samples. So population, all teachers in high schools in one city, college students in all community colleges, adult educators in all schools of education. And then it goes to the sample from the target population, it goes to the sample. So all high school biology teachers, we have students in one community college, adult educators in 5 schools of education in the Midwest. So looking at the population and looking at the sample, so you can find there some specific examples on what are populations and what are samples. But you will have a better understanding if you are taking statistics or you have taken already statistics. So what participants will you study? We have probability sampling and then the non-probability sampling. So you can find there the definition of probability sampling design. No? The selection of individuals from the population so that they are representative of the population. Non-probability sampling is the selection of participants because they are available, convenient, or represent some characteristics of the investigator wants to study. Now, in a statistical perspective, when we talk about probability sampling design, this is what we call the random sampling design. The other term of probability sampling design is random sampling design. The non-probability sampling design is what we call the non-random sampling design. Now, in simpler perspective, in a statistical perspective also, first you're going to identify the population, classify first the population as to finite or infinite. So when say finite, you can enumerate the total members of the population from the first member up to the last member. And if you can do that, that is what we call finite population. And if you have a finite population, you need a probability sampling design or a random sampling design. No, no, no for non-probability or non-random sampling design. Now, if the population is finite, and what is an example of finite? What is a finite population? That means that the members of the population can be enumerated, but not all. Some can be enumerated and some cannot be enumerated. So, if that would be the case, that is a finite. For example, prostitutes in Dumaguete, so some can be enumerated, but some cannot. So we call that one as a finite population. And if you have a finite population, you have to make use of a non-probability sampling design or the non-random sampling design. And no, no, no for probability or random sampling design. So take note of that. In finite population, you need to use probability or random sampling design. In finite population, you have to use non-probability or non-random sampling design. So these are the different sampling designs in a diagram. For a moment. So we have quantitative sampling strategies, probability sampling design, then non-probability sampling design. So we have simple random sampling, stratified sampling design, multi-stage cluster sampling design. We have convenience sampling design, then snowball sampling design for the non-probability sampling design. But these are actually incomplete sampling designs. So your other assignment aside from the presentation of your title and the statement of the problem, I want you to have an intensive reading of the quantitative sampling designs. So the probability sampling design that you see is incomplete. The non-probability sampling design is also incomplete. I want you to read everything about sampling designs. So that would be part of the assignment on Saturday. Reading assignment, and then keep in touch with our Google Classroom. I'm going to give specific directions on what are you going to do with this assignment, sampling designs. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Doc.
Yes, Doc.
And then I'm not going to discuss all of those because these are actually topics of statistics. No? So the appropriate subject, this one should be discussed, is actually in statistics. But I just emphasize this one in passing. Simple random selection, systematic, and then we go to stratified sampling design, then multi-stage sampling design. Then we have some sample of proportional stratification sampling design. Then we have convenient sampling design, the snowball sampling design. Then sampling error, sample size formula. And then let me go directly to obtaining different types of permission. So the sampling design is basically part of statistics. So you will learn that one better in the statistics class. So normally, those who are taking research must take also statistics for better understanding in the research methodology process, especially in the statistical treatment and other designs that need the statistics. So let me go directly to different types of permission. So I repeat, the sampling designs would be part of your reading assignment. And then keep in touch with our Google Classroom. I'm going to give specific directions on how are you going to do the assignment. So we have types of permission: institutional or organizational permission, school district, specific sites, secondary school or elementary school, or it might be individual participants. Then parents of participants who are not considered adults, campus approval, university or college, and then institutional review board or the ethics committee. That for now, there are universities that do not require, shall I say, do not require review uh, board for ethical considerations, but most are actually using the ethical standards, no, in doing research. That is why we need to have also a letter to the Institutional Review Board or the IRB. And this is an organization in charge for the ethical considerations of the study. Then obtain informed consent. So later I'll be talking about informed consent, no, as part of the discussion. So committee of faculty and at least one person not affiliated with institution review to ensure research protects the rights of the participants. At the North Graduate School, we have already our ethics committee. So the graduate school for now is still exempted for the ethics committee. But all other researches conducted by the university should undergo an ethics committee review and cannot be conducted without the ethics committee approval. But our graduate school is not yet actually implementing that one fully. But for me, as a researcher, I would like to suggest that you have to undergo approval from the ethics committee, especially for now. Now we have RA on data privacy and other laws. We might be able to to have breaching of contracts, or shall we say, we're not able to address privacy, we're able to harm also some of our respondents or subjects. So we have to be um, uh, very sensitive about that issue. So, obtain informed consent, the process of obtaining approval from review boards. Start by finding out about the review process used at your campus. Determining what information the review board needs about your project. Develop an informed consent form for participants to sign before they participate in the study. Submit a description of your proposed study to the IRB. What is IRB, Gani?
Institutional board review.
Okay, institutional review board. The example consent includes no title, voluntary participation, statement, right to withdraw, purpose, procedures, right to ask questions, obtain results, anonymity, no known risk or state risk if known, benefits, signature line for participant, information about investigator. So these are the components no, of an informed consent. Later, I'm going to present a specific sample of informed consent. But let me finish para I will not be switching slides. No? Just let me finish this PowerPoint. So flow of activities, the flow of activities in collecting data. So identify the variable, operationally define the variable. That is, define the variable based on the way you use that variable. If you are going to say academic achievement, and you mean these are the quarter 1 grades of grade 7, then define that variable in that perspective or in that manner. But if the definition of the variable is the same to the definition given by textbooks, given by dictionaries, or meaning that variable follow, has that meaning following the universal meaning of the term of that variable, then you don't need to define that one. Locate data. So measures, observations, documents with questions and scales. Then collect data on instruments yielding numeric scores. Why numeric? Because we are in a quantitative research design. So identify the variable. Self-efficacy for learning from others. That's the variable, self-efficacy. Operationally define the variable. So we have level of confidence that an individual can learn something by being taught by others. Locate data measures, observations. So example, 13 items on a self-efficacy attitudinal scale from Virgin 1989. Now, if we're going to look at into that year 1989 and now is 2022, but that is not that is not a study. That is actually a developed instrument, validated. So even if that is old, but we can still use that one because that is not a study. A study would be a thesis, or shall we say a dissertation or a research article published in a journal where the researcher is able to collect empirical data. And if that would be the case, you need to have recency of the article, recency of the document. Last 5 years or within the last 10 years to be not so strict no, in terms of the timeline. And then collect data on instruments yielding numeric scores. Scores of each item range from 0 to 10, with 10 being completely confident. So all are actually being itemized and well described. Operational definition. So specification of how You will define and measure the variable. Identify how to measure. Cite the other authors who have defined the variable or the term. Choose types of data and measures. Instrument, a tool for measuring, observing, or documenting quantitative data. So in the acronym SMART, we have letter M, measurable. So when can you say nga it is measurable? If you have the instrument ready for the data collection. If you don't have the instrument, then you're going to make your own. But making your own is actually very tedious, so difficult. You have to undergo validation and you have to undergo reliability testing. So review first related literature and studies. Maybe you can find an instrument similar to your study and you can actually borrow it. So types of data, measures of individual performance, measures of individual attitude, observations of individual behavior, factual information. So choose types of data and measures. So performance measures. So you can actually make use of achievement tests, intelligence tests, aptitude tests, interest inventory, personality assessment inventory. So example of an instrument that measures performance. So the one that is found in the slide. Then attitudinal measures. Attitudinal measures measures feelings toward educational topics or any other topics relative to feelings, relative to emotions, relative to interest. Writing to encourage honest response. Then limitation is no evidence of specific behavior. So what are the behavior observations? So we have selecting instrument to record the behavior, observing individuals for that behavior, checking points on a scale that reflect the behavior. So we have factual information or personal documents. So grade reports, school attendance records, student demographic data, census information. Then privacy regulations may apply. In the Philippines, we have now Republic Act on data privacy. So we have to be very careful. That is why we need to have informed consent for our data collection, for our research in general, our thesis, our dissertation must have informed consent. Because a researcher can go to jail if there is actually an intrusion to data privacy and some violations of the different ethical standards according to professions. Then use of websites and the internet for administering surveys, gathering interviews, mining social media, Facebook, Twitter, and using existing databases. In the Philippines, we have many government agencies having different websites and having different databases. So we can actually make use of them. Then choose types of data and measures. How to decide what types to choose. So the first bullet, what am I trying to learn? What is realistic to collect? What are the advantages and disadvantages? So these are some common things that you are going to look into when you are going to make a decision. Locate or develop an instrument. So I mentioned this one. To be measurable, you need to have an instrument. If you don't have an instrument, then how could you say it is measurable? So locate first. If you could not locate, develop your own. Create your own instrument. So the person develop it yourself. So you have to undergo validation. You have to undergo reliability testing, and it will take a long time also. Modify an instrument. You have found an instrument, but some items are not relevant. But you notice the majority of the items are relevant, can be used in your study, so you can modify the one. But even if you modify that one from an old standardized instrument, you need to validate that one and you need to undergo reliability testing. The other one, locate one to use in its entirety. That means you're able to have one exact instrument that can be used totally in your own data collection, in your own research. And that is actually the most uh, good one. So phase one, planning stage. Figure 5.9, the steps in developing or constructing an instrument. So these are the steps. Planning. So state purpose of test and target groups. Identify and define domain of test. Review literature on construct or variable of interest. Give open-ended questions to target. Group, interpret open-ended comments. Write objectives. Select item one. That is phase one. Huh? If you are going to construct your own. Phase two, construction. Develop a table of specification. If you are a graduate of an education degree, then you know what is a table of specification. If you work at DepEd, basically you know what is a table of specification. If you are not from DepEd, you're not an education graduate, I want you to search, I want you to research about table of specification. That will not be discussed because that is not part, but that is part of the construction, no, of a research instrument. Hire and train item writers. You can do that. Write full items, validate the content, have judges complete qualitative evaluation, develop new or revised items. Now, phase 3, quantitative evaluation. Prepare instrument for first pilot testing. So dapat you are going to pilot test it. Administer first pilot test, debrief subjects, calculate reliability. I mentioned that one. No? Once validated, you have to undergo reliability testing. But when you do reliability testing, you have to undergo pilot testing first. Debrief subjects, calculate reliability, run item analysis. If there is actually a test, you are going to have an item analysis to find out if it is actually not very difficult nor too easy, but it's actually in between the very difficult and the too easy categories. Then revise instrument, then prepare for second pilot testing. So the pilot testing would not happen just once, but can be done twice, no, depending on the result of the pilot testing. So phase 4, validation, administer second pilot testing, run item analysis, and then repeat steps of revision, pilot administration, and item analysis. Begin validation, administer for validation data, continue validation. So in general, we go into what? The development of an instrument, constructing an instrument from scratch to standardized one, but it will take a long time. And it's very tedious. You have to follow all of the phases from phase 1 up to phase 4. Search for an instrument. So if you're not going to make your own, you can search. Look in published journals. Use ERIC. No, ERIC is actually an acronym. You can find that one in the internet. Check test in print. Mental measurement yearbook. You can find also some instruments there. Or develop your own instrument, as I mentioned in the previous slide. Criteria for choosing a good instrument. For instance, you're able to search an instrument. Now, this is actually relevant. I can use this one in my study, in my thesis, in my dissertation. But look at also this criteria. Have authors developed the instrument presently? Is the instrument widely cited by other authors? A review is available for the instrument. Is there information about the reliability and validity of scores from past uses of the instrument? So dapat, no? Now, the instrument must indicate what is the reliability index, what is the validity index of that instrument developed by someone. And then, if that is developed by someone, is it cited by other authors? If it is developed but no one cites that one, no other authors are using that one, then the instrument that you develop is not good. Why not good? Because no one cites that one. No one is using that one. So one of the things that you are going to consider that is the best instrument when you are going to go to Google Scholar, you search that article and you look at the number of citations. The more citations, the more that you would say, aha, this is actually a very good instrument. Why? Many are using this one. Many are citing this one. Do you follow? Hello?
Yes, Doc.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Then we have, does the procedure for recording data fit the research question, hypothesis in your study? Try to look at into cultural biases. Like I was having an advisee 3 years ago, and then he told me,
Alert from calendar.
sir,
The server responded with an error.
sorry, sir, I have found an instrument, sir, developed by an American professor. Okay. Is there any bias, culture bias? No, sir. Are you sure? Let me read the items. Problem solving. What is used in problem solving? Normally in the Philippines, in algebra, we do have the term, okay, 25 cents, 50 cents. There are 5 50 cents, then blah, 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 25 cents. So our students know what is 50 cents, 25 cents, what is 10 cents. But when I read the instrument, I saw now what is being used there is actually nickels, dimes, quarters. And I told my advisee, if this would be the case, you are not going to modify the instrument, then there is a culture bias. Language is part of culture. We don't use in the Philippines nickels, quarters, dimes. And if you are going to say, how many dimes are there? How many nickels are there? How many quarters are there? There are 10 times dimes as there are 10 nickels in the box. So the students could not answer that one correctly, not because they do not know the scale in mathematics, but they are not able to answer that one because of the words used in the instrument. Now, there is actually a culture bias in terms of language. Now, what are used in there? Nickels, dimes, quarters, which are not commonly used in the Philippines. And that is an example of the statement, does the, hold on, does the instrument contain accepted scales? Not. There's a statement there. Uh, which one? Okay, does the procedure for recording data fit the research question, hypothesis in your study? So looking at the instrument itself, you look at into things that would really fit into your study. And if that is actually a developed instrument in a Western country, look at also the biases, especially in terms of the culture bias. Looking at the language bias also, and some other terms used in their country. Remember, it is validated, it is tested in a Western country, and you are going to use here in the Philippines na valid, na actually we are in a developing country. So totally different in terms of the setting. But do not also saying, pag Western DI cannot be used in the Philippines. There are actually instruments developed in Western countries but can be used in the Philippines. Why? Because the validity and the reliability testing were conducted also in the Philippines. They conducted different tests of reliability, tests of validity in different parts of the globe. So there's actually applicability, usability of the instrument in the Philippines. But still, look at the items of the instrument to determine the 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 language itself if there is no culture bias. Reliability, all of those concepts in reliability will be part of our statistics class. No? So I suggest that you are going to read this one in detail and in the statistics course. So with validity, no? We look at validity later in which you are going to consider that this instrument is actually valid. Your instrument is valid in collecting what kind of variable, and the instrument is actually stable, no, in collecting the data. That's the general perspective of validity and reliability. So let me go to figure 5.10, reliability and validity questions for selecting, evaluating a test or instrument. So reliability. Did the author check for reliability? If so, what form of reliability was reported? Was an appropriate type used? Where the reliability values coefficients reported? Were they positive, high coefficients? All of these must have corresponding answers for you to evaluate, no, whether you are going to use that kind of instrument. In terms of validity, did the author check for validity? If so, what type of validity was reported? Was more than one type reported? Was the validity evidence reported with appropriate statistics? Was the evidence strong? So all of these will guide you in the determination or in the selection or in the evaluation of a test or an instrument to collect data for your thesis or for your dissertation. Criteria for choosing a good instrument. Do the instrument's data recording procedures fit the research questions or hypotheses? Recording procedures fit the data you need to answer the question. Who records the data? Is it self-reported or does the researcher record? Participant supplied takes less time. Researcher supplied may be higher quality. So take note of those different things. And then we look up into data, nominal, ordinal, interval, and then ratio. These are actually topics in statistics. So I will not discuss that one in detail because this will be discussed in statistics. Those who are taking statistics with me, I discussed this one already. Why is it very important to look at into the categories of the data that you have as to nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio? Because we have to use statistics in quantitative research design. And if you are not going to identify your data as to nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio, you could not use also an appropriate statistical tools because each nominal data, ordinal, interval, or ratio, there is a corresponding statistical tool. So you cannot actually decide what tool to be used if you are not able to categorize your data as to nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio. Standardization. Develop standard written procedures for administering an instrument. Then train researchers to collect observational data. Obtain permission to collect and use public documents. Permission is actually very important. If you collect data from DepEd, you start asking permission from the division superintendent. If you are going to collect data from the university, you start asking permission from the university president. Not because a faculty member of NORSU is a friend of yours, then you can just collect the data. No, that is unethical. You have to ask permission from the head of the university. That's from the president. Then down to the VPAA, down to the dean, then down to the department chair, then down to the concerned faculty. If you're working from DepEd, then from the superintendent down to the CID, down to the different supervisors, down to the principals, then down to the different chairman of the different areas within the school, then to the different subject teachers. So that's the protocol. Ethical issues. So I mentioned that one already, no? So respect individuals and sites during data gathering, obtain permission. That's actually an SOP. Protect anonymity by assigning numbers to instruments. No? So di na uso karon ngayon ka name, but you are going to assign codes. Because we are using now ethical standards, so avoid using name for the instrument. Dapat naka-code na lang siya to address what? To address data privacy. Respect those who do not want to participate. That must be considered. Observations can be disruptive. So take note of that. Examine method section, assume consent and permissions, obtain sampling strategy, know number of sites and sample size. Instruments, try to look at sharing the DREAM parent questionnaire, Likert type, interval data, parametric statistics, because when you are going to have statistics subject, you can have that one as parametric or non-parametric. You look at into reliability from past use too, not using validity evidence. That's the last one. And then I'll stop sharing. I'm going to share one informed consent. Hold on for a moment. While I'm looking my file, kindly raise clarifications if you have. Raise clarifications. Raise clarifications. No clarifications?
Sir, if mag-qualitative ta sir no, wala na may statistics
Um,
design.
we're going to have qualitative statistics. The sampling design is part of the statistics. And the simple, but not the high tech. But maybe not depending on your statement of the problem. Of course, the identification of the respondents, you're going to do that. So that would be part of the statistical process. But having tables, the formal tables for statistics, we don't have that.
Thank you, sir.
Just for a moment, I'm going to look at my file. While waiting for my file, think of clarifications about the PowerPoints that I shared to you. No clarifications? Hello? No clarifications?
Doc.
Okay. So we have needs assessment among the senior citizen of Kalindagan, Dumaguete City, basis for a functional intervention program. This is our uh, needs assessment sa Barangay Kalindagan. No? And this actually the the informed consent that I developed. I am the lead researcher for this. So there is an introduction. So the introduction is provided. Can you take a screenshot para you have the idea? Because I'm going to let you create your own. Sige. So take a screenshot as I go into the details. No? So the purpose of the study is actually written. The procedures are written also. The benefits are written in a black and white. Payment of participants dapat naka-indicate. If there is no payment, dapat naka-indicate. If there's a payment, dapat naka-indicate. Participant confidentiality must be incorporated in the informed consent. So let me read. Your name will not be associated in any publication or presentation with the information collected about you or with the research findings from this study. Instead, the researchers will use a study number or a pseudonym rather than your name. Your identifiable information will not be shared unless, letter A, it is required by law or university policy, or B, you give written permission. Permission granted on this date to use and disclose your information remains in effect indefinitely. By signing this form, you give permission for the use and disclosure of your information for purposes of this study at any time in the future. So that's actually participant confidentiality. We look at payments to participants. So the research participants will not receive any payment in participating this study. And naka-all caps siya, naka-highlight siya para the participants would not expect that they would be paid after the data collection. Then benefits, the research participants will be the direct beneficiaries of the functional intervention program that can be developed from this needs assessment research. Then we have refusal to sign consent and authorization. You are not required to sign this consent and you may refuse to do so without affecting your right to any services you are receiving or may receive from the functional program that can be developed from this study. However, if you refuse to sign, you cannot participate in this study. Okay, so klaruhon ko na siya. If you refuse to sign, you cannot participate in this study. Because participating in a study is voluntary. No? Voluntary, and dapat you have the evidence na there is actually a signature affixed to the informed consent. So, unlike before, you can actually say, okay, kindly participate and all the blah, blah, blah. But for now, with the existence of the RA on data privacy, all researchers have to make informed consent, except if you are not dealing with humans. You're not dealing with people. No? So you can actually have this one, being not part of the entire research process. Canceling this consent and authorization. You may withdraw your consent to participate in this study at any time. You also have the right to cancel your permission to use and disclose further information collected about you in writing at any time by sending your written request to, it's my name because I'm the lead researcher, the research coordinator, College of Teacher Education, Negros Oriental State University. If you cancel permission to use your information, the researchers will stop collecting additional information about you. However, the research team may use undisclosed information that was gathered before they received your cancellation and as described above. So for example, you have signed already the informed consent last June, and the term is actually up to December. And then today, you have indicated na you are going to stop participating the research. But data were collected already before or earlier. So those data can still be used by what? The research team. And only at this time na there will be no data collection because you stop participating. But those earlier data collected from you can still be used as it is indicated in here. However, the research team may use undisclosed information that was gathered before they receive your cancellation as described above. Because you have given naman the permission and then you decided today. So meaning the data collected from June up to yesterday could still be used by the research team or the research. Then questions about participation should be directed to, so my name, my address, blah, blah, blah. Then participant certification, so it's here. Parent participants, print participant's name, participant signature, and then the date. So did you take a screenshot?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Okay. So introduction. So that's the content of the introduction. We have the College of Teacher Education of Negros Oriental State University, Main Campus 1, and the barangay officials of Calindagan, Dumaguete City. Support the practice of protection for human subjects participating in any form of research. The following information is provided for you to decide whether you wish to participate in the present study. You may refuse to sign this form and not participate in this study. You should be aware that even if you agree to participate, you are free to withdraw at any time. If you do withdraw from this study, it will not affect your relationship with the aforementioned agencies. So, then the purpose of the study, the procedures, so forth and so on. So all of these are the components of informed consent. So the other thing that you are going to submit on Saturday, you're going to submit this on Saturday. Just keep in touch with our Google Classroom on how are you going to submit it. Make your own informed consent following the pattern: introduction, purpose of the study, procedures, benefits, payment of participants, participant confidentiality, refusal to sign consent and authorization, canceling this consent and authorization. Then questions about participation should be directed to dapat that must be found in your informed consent, participant certification, and then the signature of the participants. So all of these must be followed. Any clarification for the informed consent?
For the question,
Yeah,
sir,
go ahead, go ahead.
can we utilize the same format
Yeah,
based on what you've shown us
I
right
am
now?
giving you the authority to make use of some of the wordings and then contextualize that one based on your proposal.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sir, regarding the may I ask a question,
Yeah,
sir?
go ahead.
Regarding the participants' signature, sir, all of our participants should have the copy of this letter, sir.
Yes, both parties must have the copy.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
It would be unfair naman na for the participants nga they don't have a copy. No? So dapat there must be a copy for both parties.
Okay, Doc.
Uh, uh, Assume that you are the participant and then I just let you sign and then you don't have a copy. That's unfair also. Diba?
Yes, Doc.
Any other clarifications?
Sir, sa amo nga program, Mave,